Good night and welcome to our third installment of our panel discussion series, where tonight we will be asking our coaches why they are important in the Namibian sport industry. It's an honor to have all of you, our physical audience, as well as everyone joining us online. Our new director, welcome, Ms. Manuel. I'm really happy to have you here, and I hope you enjoy it with us tonight. I think I'll start introducing our panel from my right-hand side. We have Ms. Maya Woordman. She is a national or former national archery coach. She also was now with our most recent Commonwealth Games, the chef de mission for the Namibian team. Then we have Ms. Chantal van der Berg. She is a athletics, gymnastics, as well as swimming coach. Currently, she is focusing on gymnastics and swimming, so I'm sure we'll get a lot of information from her. Then, to my closest right, we have Mr. Krisander Botha. He is the under-20 national rugby coach, as well as the assistant coach to Alistair Coetzee for the senior rugby team. All right. To my far left, we have Ms. Jeline Meyer, the national netball senior national coach, or I don't want to say former. She's currently on sabbatical, but she is the coach for the Desert Jewels. Then we have Mr. Sherwin Fries. He's an athletics coach as well as a former Olympian and Commonwealth athlete. And then closest to my left is Mr. Ricardo Manetti, our former Brave Warriors coach. Welcome, panel. I'm honored to have you. I'm sure we're going to have an interesting discussion tonight. The discussion inside was already so interesting, so let's just keep it rolling. All right, welcome once again.
Thank you.
I think I'm going to go to Jules, if you don't mind calling you that. I'm going to go to you first. I'm going to ask you, why do we deem coaches necessary or important in Namibia?
Well, I don't think any sport can exist without a coach in there. Just as important as an athlete is, a coach is a very important part of the setup in terms of a successful team structure, whether it's an individual sport or team sport. I also believe that the coaches involved in your sport very much determine the quality and the level at which the athlete perform, I basically want to say the image of the sport will be and how that sport will develop. You know, success ensures that young kids see role models in certain sports. Therefore, you see the development from grassroots level right through if it's a successful system. And much of a successful system is centered around a driven coach or an ambitious athlete. And I think those are all very important components in the recipe for a success in any discipline, whatever sport it might be.
Very interesting point. And I'm going to jump to Chantal on this one, and I want to ask you, thinking of what Jules just said, do you think that is what the rest of the industry thinks about coaches?
I hope so, but I don't know. I think a coach should always be considered as, can I say, a mother figure or a father figure on a sports field, because our parents can't always be there, especially with school sports codes. And I think that sometimes the coach gets sort of lost in the background and they don't get the recognition they deserve in all cases of seeing what the coach actually offered up for that athlete and how that athlete has progressed throughout the years with that coach. And sometimes what also happens a lot of times, if the parents or the athlete doesn't see a result immediately, they get moved to another coach. And that can be a big problem in the sport industries.
So Ricardo, she just touched on something that I always tell the students. As a coach, you can make or break an athlete with what you say and what you do with him. But then you're going to get that opportunity, or you're going to get that circumstance where you're going to work so hard with that athlete, and then just like that, their parents decide, no, we're going somewhere else. What does a coach do in that situation?
I think that's, thanks a lot for the opportunity, and good evening to everyone here. And yeah, thanks, Edward. I think that it's become very relevant with youth sports and with, you know, especially if you look at athletics, swimming, where it's very individual. With football, it's a little bit different. In terms of the parent involvement is not that much. It's still at under 15, under 17 level, where they would change teams. But once the player has graduated and he becomes now a professional, or is in the national team, the first team, then the parent involvement normally subside, because then that's your high level, and then parents normally feel, hey, I don't know much about this level, so let me not interfere that much. So it normally happens in, especially football, like I said, with your youth, in your youth structures. Now, I was also an under-20 coach many years ago, and that was the case. But I started with this philosophy that I want to share with everyone here is, I'm still to see a successful team achieve, or that, let me rather rephrase, there's no successful team without good human beings. So as Ricardo Manetti, I'd never started coaching just tactics, technique, and all those things. I started with a human being first. Because if a human being is disciplined, if a human being is a better man, if you have a child and you don't look after that child, then I have a problem. How are you going to look after a national asset like the national team? So all those disciplines come into play. So we worked a lot on to make the player a better human being. And once that player becomes a better human being, he becomes coachable. He understands, oh, there's a hierarchy. Oh, there's discipline. Oh, I can't do this. I can't say this. I have to eat right. I have to act right. Whatever I do on social media, I'll be held accountable for it. So we start normally with those values before even coaching. Because if you stay at home, and this is very relevant, especially in Karatura, Kommersdal, where we grew up, if you staying with your parents and you over 21, and when the national team gives you a few dollars and you don't buy groceries or you don't contribute to the electricity or the rent, we have a problem. Because then it means I cannot walk a path with you in order to achieve. Because there's a lot of weight on a national player. And if they don't understand that, they will not understand the weight they're carrying to make sure that Namibia qualifies for AFCON or win COSAFA or qualify for World Cup.
You're making it sound like coaches are quite invested in the lives of athletes.
Very much.
Which is the truth. Then I want to ask you then, are coaches equipped to be that invested? Or is it something that you just learn as you go along?
Well, I was fortunate to have been in the industry since age 17. I played for the national team when I was only 17, the first team. So you look around, you look at your seniors sitting there and you see how they do things. And as you grow older, you acquire a lot of these things that the industry will need later on. So I was very fortunate. So when I became a coach, I realized that, once again, let me go a little bit off, that you will see that I speak a lot of coaching and not so much in tactics and in line. I've realized that I had to become a very good salesman before I became a very good coach. So what am I trying to say here? If you don't have the capacity or the ability to sell a tactic to a player, because you're selling it. If I want to play a certain way and he comes from a different background, I need to sell my tactic to him. So you become a salesman. And if you're not a very good salesman, your players are going to say when they go to the showers, they're going to go, say, this guy knows nothing. He doesn't know what he's doing. etc., etc. So that those type of skills I've acquired, and I've realized in my time as a player that this specific coach was a very good salesman. This specific coach made me believe in the tactic, although I didn't agree with it. Yeah.
So Zander, I'm going to come to you, and apart from being invested in the athlete, Ricardo is also basically saying that as a coach you need to sell yourself to your athletes. Do you think that is something that we're doing as coaches?
Obviously, I think we're trying our best with the resources we have. But then it's also, all coaches are basically guided by their own coaching philosophy. It starts off with experience, first of all, and then it translates directly into the way you coach. So I think it's just easier to make sense and to sell yourself, as Ricardo just mentioned, to a player if you found yourself in that position before, but then also guided by the core values of your coaching philosophy. So you'll know how to obviously adapt should it be required, and then also what's required from you in order to move forward. So I think with what we have in the country at the moment, Namibia is not doing like, we're not South Africa, and we need to accept that at the moment. But it's all about continuous development. So as we learn as coaches, which is necessary. I think you never know too much. You can always learn, and then as we learn, we directly influence the people that work with us, number one, and then the players as well that work for us, basically. So I think that's important that we have a clear understanding as to what your philosophy is, the type of player you work with, and then what obviously stimulates them and gives them the best opportunities to grow as a player and as a person.
So you're touching quite a lot on your coaching philosophy. Is this something that you develop over time? Is it something that you're educated with?
Yeah, obviously the philosophy is all about what you want to achieve at the end of the day and how you're going to get it, how you're going to get there. So, like I just mentioned, it's all about implementing the core values, what you are guided by, and then obviously beliefs. So we all have a set of rules that we believe in, guided by our core values. That's not right. We need to do this. Ricardo mentioned, like, if you come through the structures, being exposed at a young age, you still need to have decision-making process in your life, and that's all guided by core values. So you'll know when you're doing something wrong, and you'll know when you're doing something right. So, and I think that's the responsibility of us as coaches, just to get that across to our players and our individuals in such a way that they continuously learn and better themselves.
Maya, I'm going to jump to you. Zander is obviously a coach of a team that consists of 22 players. Were you working with individuals? Thank you. You're working with individuals and it's a one-on-one type of coaching. Can these same principles be applied to archery?
Yes, I think it doesn't matter if it's a team sport or individual sport. As a coach, you are also always more than just teaching a person skills. You are a father, you are a mentor, you must listen to them. So you are more than just a plain coach. There's many more skills you have to have. You have to be ethical, correct. You have, there's such a broad spectrum of stuff you have to consider before you can really be a good coach. And then also, it depends if you're coaching a child or if you're coaching an adult. You will treat an adult differently than you will treat a child. Your terminology will be different. Your approach will be different. And that a coach also has to know. So all this game setting, goal setting, it doesn't matter if it's a team sport or an individual sport. The basic principles will stay the same.
Right. So then I want to ask you then, you're saying that working with a child will be different than working with an adult. Why? Why would it be different?
Already from language, if you speak to a child, you will use different words. And also you have to be at their level. They will need different skills. If you start at a young age, then the skills you will teach an adult. So it is a different approach. You cannot treat a child like an adult. No, it doesn't work.
Sharon, I'm going to come to you, and I'm first going to take it back to you being an athlete and being coached. Was there a difference as a child athlete being coached compared to you being coached as an adult?
Oh yeah, I think there was because as a young athlete, I was never
Mic check.
mic check 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I can just speak like this. As a young athlete, I was a bit of a rebel. So it took a different type of skill. Luckily, my coach was a very calm and just not reserved, but he was very calm and he knew how to work with me. So because I was talented, I was ignorant, and because I could play different sports. So what I did was, if I get suspended and the athletic season is over, I play rugby. If that season is over and I get suspended, I play another sport, so the school would keep me. So the school would always keep me. They would always be there. But my turning point was 1998. There was an incident in the Commonwealth Games, and all the people involved there. And like we just discussed, I spoke the truth, but there was a manner in a way I spoke the truth. So the coach, he said to me, you can change or you can go. So I left. But in 1999, I decided, you know what? I need this as much as the next athlete. And I had to eat humble pie, but I had to redo my matric. I had to go apologize to 37 teachers. You know how small you feel when you have to say sorry to 37 people in one room. And there I learned, and my coach taught me the value of being honest and how to value what you have and who you are. And you have to identify with something. And he gave me that saying that was in the gym. He said, it's okay, you made a mistake yesterday. And he had so much empathy with me. And he said, there's a saying on the wall that says, never let yesterday's disappointment overshadow tomorrow's dreams. And from that 1998, end of 1998, 99, I stuck with it. And I love the way he coached me. And I took that when I went to the USA, when I went to South Africa. But when I went to South Africa, I had a different coach. He was hardcore. And now I'm there, and when I come out of my shell, I come out. I don't leave anything behind. And then, but luckily when I thought about how I was taught and how I was brought up as a young athlete, and that characteristic, it came out, and I decided, you know what, I'm not going to let this guy intimidate me, because he didn't know me, I didn't know him. And the way he coached was very aggressive, he knows it all, and I had to adapt and I had to learn. So the different styles of coaching was, one had empathy and the other one was just robust. And but luckily I accepted that I made mistakes in the past. And the funniest thing was, I was like you were, I was like the coach was, but I was very much younger than him. And I could take that and I learned from it, and I put it all in one basket. And then I became coachable again, or not even coachable, but a lot of coaches wanted to coach me, but I wasn't approachable. And I became approachable first before I became coachable.
Sure. Okay. That's quite a lesson to learn, eh?
Yeah.
So do you now apply what you've learned as an athlete and going through all of this? Do you now apply it to when you coach athletes?
Most of the time. Sometimes I want to just but that's a coach. And it's like she said, we forget also sometimes that we are just working with kids. And because I have a balance. I have some teenagers and some preteens, and I've got some youngsters. So I need to remember which one is the more mature ones. We tend to split them, but who you are as a coach, it comes up. Your core moral and values and all of those things. And I've I want to say chased, yeah, actually. I sent a couple of kids home for throwing tantrums at the training. And I teach them, I said, you don't come and apologize to me. Or your mother doesn't come and apologize to me. You come and apologize to your teammates. even though it's an individual sport, we are one team, we are one group, and we all work together. And those that are humble enough, they come back, and they apologize, and they go on, and we have a good team, we have a good spirit. But like I said, we have to teach the athletes first. We have to develop the person first before we start coaching them.
Yeah. Jules, I'm going to come to you, and as you guys are speaking, and I'd now like to invite the panel, if you have a comment to add or anything like that, please feel free. But you guys are all speaking on things you need to teach your athletes, things you need to instill in them, knowledge you need to impart. So I want to ask this question, does this come from the education you gain and the theoretical knowledge? Or does these things that you know you need to teach and instill with your athletes, do they come from the experiences you have had as former athletes?
I think for everyone it's different. I think what makes a good coach is obviously some people learn more from having the experience themselves. Like he learned more from the way that he was treated by various coaches being an athlete. Some people are gifted by themselves. Some people have very strong drives or core values. Some people believe in the goodness of a person and connecting to the human being, activating them via that process. I think you can learn a lot theoretically by professional education, but it's a combination of everything together. And I think that is one of the big things that lack in specifically high performance sport. At schools levels or at young levels, it is like Maria is saying, you need to connect on a specific level to activate a player to get them into that sporting code, whatever that sporting code is. You need to be able to get a team into a zone, an individual into a performance profile for them to be able to perform. But in saying that and in doing that, you also need to install the rest of the values needed to cope with the platform where they will be achieving on. And that's where we lack a lot in terms of what we're creating for these athletes. Like say for instance, here's a very good example to take. He was an athlete with tremendous talent, but he was never taught coping skills, composure skills, dealing with the pressure, with the media, that everything that comes with it. So you can teach someone to be a good person, but in a high performance sporting world where it's a merciless environment, you get shredded if you're just a nice person. You need to be able to at some stages hold your tongue, at some stages chase the kid home, at some stages get them back in line. So I think the most important part of any part of education, whatever the journey is that has the biggest impact on you as an athlete or as a team member or as the coach, is the fact that you need to be able to connect, trust and respect. If you've got those principles, then you will be able to bypass any of those uncomfortable situations or any of those conflicts that do happen. I think in team sports it's much more because you work with individuals with different backgrounds, the diversity is very different, cultures are very different, so there's a lot more to it and you need to find common ground. And that common ground is centered in respecting each other, trusting each other, and in teams it's usually about the team culture. And you can come as a coach and you can have these beautiful philosophies about this is a good coach and this is how we're going to do it and this is how this program is going to run. But a team in itself develop their own culture and their own identity. Then it's earned. Then it's that shared respect, and that shared respect make them go the extra mile for one another and the extra mile for the program, the tournament, the whatever they are involved in. And that is that special thing that you want as a coach, whether you're coaching an individual or whether you're coaching a team. That X factor is what makes the rugby team be able to compete with New Zealand, make the athletes be able to perform at a world-class level. It's that little X thing. And that X you find in a variety of ways. But the one thing I've learned as a coach, if you stop learning as a coach, then you should also be chased away. And you learn in various places. You learn from teaching that learn to swim kit that you're teaching, you from the individual coaching that you do, from the team coaching that you do, and you learn from your players, you learn from your assistant, you learn from whatever your analyst, everyone that's involved. You stop learning, you get into a dangerous space.
Definitely, I completely agree with you. Chantel, it sounds like the school of life for the coach is also a very important school to attend. Because I don't think all of these core values that you guys are highlighting tonight are found within the theoretical books that we're going to ever teach in a sports science or sports management curriculum. But do you think that it's going to be different for every single team or every single athlete that you're coaching? Because as I gather from what Jules is saying, you need to first get to know your athlete and then you start coaching them. So if for example, Krasander went from under 20 to senior, is it important for Krasander or any coach to get to know the under 20s and then coach them, and when we changed, to do the same again?
Yes, every athlete is an individual. So you cannot, if I have a group of 5 gymnastic girls, not one of them are the same. So every way I teach the same skill, I have to separate the girls from one another, because the one girl will understand it like this, the next girl will understand it differently. Like, for example, at the beginning of the year, I had one girl and I needed to ask her, do you trust me? And she's like, I don't trust you, not yet. And I'm like, okay, but this is a sport of trust, because I need to help you. I need to carry you over the bar or help spot you into a back flick or a front somersault. I need to be able that you trust me. So we needed to do trust exercises, me and her together, just to gain that trust between the two of us. And by now she trusts me completely. So every single athlete and every single team is a different scenario. You can't compare them to one another. Every personality is a different one. And then from day to day, you get different moods as well. So you have to go with that as well. Anything that goes wrong at home comes back to the sport field. And you first need to stop them and say, okay, you are here to escape now from whatever is happening in your life outside. Just come back to me and relax, and we are going to sort everything out, and then we can continue with performing in your sport. So every day and every person is different. And so as well with your teams. You can't compare them with one another.
Yeah, so I've come to understand that you are coaching predominantly younger athletes.
Yes.
School-aged athletes. Do you then have to spend that same time getting to know their parents as well, and having their parents trust you just as much?
With gymnastics, we don't see the parents that often, because we have a policy that the parents need to stay outside of the gymnastics hall, because it's a very intense sport. So we need the child's complete focus on that sport. You cannot look around while walking on, waving to your mom, hello, and if you fall, you can get hurt. So there we don't have any parents. But at my athletics coaching, I do get to know the parents, and I need them to know me, and I need to discuss and understand how my process and my game for them will be. With my swimming, the same. I need to tell the parents, okay, this is where your child is now. This is what your child struggles with. For example, if a child doesn't, because I do water safety with kids. So if a child doesn't want to float on their backs, I need to ask the next questions. Does your child have seasickness? Do they have gromlins in their ears? Do they feel sensitive to sounds? So that I can understand how to approach this. Have they ever had a scare in the swimming pool? So yeah, in swimming and athletics, I get to know the parents quite personally, but with the gymnastics, on competition basis only.
Krasander, she's touching on a topic that I think is sensitive to many parents. Some of us live vicariously through our children when they're on the playing fields. Have you had that experience where you've had to first coach the parent before coaching the child?
I've been fortunate enough to be in a position where I've coached kids, like my hostess here next to me. I've been in a position where I coach guys that come out just to enjoy it and be social. That's all, because they love the sport. And then also I've been involved now with a high performance team, a senior team, which is obviously result driven. So on that topic, I think the added pressure from parents, it's continuous, it never stops. Obviously, each and everyone wants the best for their child. That's the nature of being a parent, I guess. And but then at the same time, there's a fine line between obviously having your child out there enjoying it and doing it for them, or them doing it for you. So what I mean by that is, like you just mentioned, there's a lot of parents that live through their children being so tough on their child because they might have not reached the goals and the heights that they wanted to in their career, and now putting added pressure on their kids to basically go out and do what they couldn't, which is, I wouldn't say it's wrong, but we need to understand that in the society we live in nowadays, and the way we grow up, it's different from what they grew up in. So with the added pressure, I think it places so much pressure on the kid itself. Besides school, besides sport, besides friends, besides growing up and having to deal with changes of your body and everything, it's difficult for a child, and we always need to remember that. So there should be a clear distinction between a high performance athlete and a kid developing and growing up, because who knows what their interest is 3-4 years from now. They might not even like rugby, they might not even like athletics, so they might want to become Sherwin looks like no one dislikes athletics, but yeah, respect to all athletes, because I think they say it's madness training every day, 4 days a week or 5 days a week, training for a 100-meter race, and then you run it in 10 seconds. So that's yeah, but it's just it never stops, I guess. And on that, there's a saying that goes, each and every parent thinks that excuse the terminology, but each and every parent thinks that their donkey is a racehorse. But we as coaches, that's where we come in, where and everyone that supports the kids as well, and the athletes, we need to basically put it in such a way that yes, we do believe it, and it can happen because anything is possible. But then at the same time, we need to be honest and open regarding strengths and weaknesses, and identify those weaknesses so that we can better the athlete, better the kid, better the individual, in order to move forward and obtain those heights that we do want to reach. So I think we as parents have I'm a parent myself, so we have a definite role in obviously the kid growing up and doing what he wants to do, but then we also need to know and make right decision when to back off, and obviously when to put a bit of pressure on the kid. So.
Ricardo, I'm going to come to you, and I'm burning with a question, because you're all touching on the parents who back off. But what about the parent who themselves was a racehorse in whatever sport it was, and now their child to them looks like they're also going to be a racehorse? How do you deal with that parent?
Sure. I'm actually the wrong person to ask a question to, because I think in the football environment, it happens, like I said previously, it happens in the youth structures a lot. Once you get into the first team structure and the high performance structure, I like the word you guys are using, the high performance team, where it's really cutthroat, it's ruthless, it's about performance based, and the stress levels are so high. I think the parents are scared to come to that level and challenge a coach to say that my son is not playing in the right position, because it's really a upper level for them to tap into. And also not to get on the wrong side of the coach. So most of the parents, once we're there at that stage, they don't really get close to the coach and challenge the coach. Where we get challenged is mostly in media. That's a huge challenge, because you would find a reporter or journalist that would write about football for the past 15, 20 years. They have knowledge about the game, so they would have a certain opinion. And then you would have obviously social media, where you get your armchair coaches or your social media coaches. So that's where
The best in the industry.
the best coaches are there. So they are the ones criticizing us and say, wrong tactics or wrong formation or wrong player, etc. So that we deal more on a daily basis with than dealing with parents.
But how do you deal with it then?
With I think it's very simple. Pray. Yeah, you have to pray a lot as well. But I think it's very simple. If you have a job that you assigned for, like the contract I had the last 4 years was I had to qualify for CHAN in it's a local thing in Africa. Then I had to qualify for AFCON. And if I did not tick those boxes, you know, it's you're out. So it's cutthroat. So the tension and the stress levels go up in the entire fan base. And how I dealt with it was, I have this mission, right? And I have this vision. Who are the people immediately around me? Let me have a good relationship with them. If you have a good relationship with the media indirectly will understand your story and write better about you. If you are on social media as a coach, you're looking for trouble. You're looking for trouble because you have to answer that specific guy. You don't know where he is. Is he sitting under a tree in Rehoboth, having a beer, criticizing you? How do you answer such a guy? Is he in a boardroom thinking that he knows because he watches Arsenal and Manchester United every weekend? He thinks he's an expert. How do you answer him? So the best is how I dealt with it was, my mission is CHAN, AFCON, COSAFA. That's the boxes I have to tick. So if I'm going to spend time on the, sorry to say, you know, they say a lion doesn't bother with the opinion of sheep. So if there are dogs barking and I have to answer every dog, no, Mr. Dog, it's not that, it's this. I'm never going to reach my goal. So for me, it was how it worked out. I went off, especially Facebook, I went off. I have an account there. I went off Facebook. And Instagram, I'm only becoming active of late after my contract ended. But the main thing is for you, and I talked about, sorry for dragging this question out, but I talked about selling your plan and your idea. It's very important that the stakeholders, that you deal with the stakeholders. We have the director here of sports. If I don't have a relationship with sports, the ministry, I'm looking for trouble. If I don't have a relationship with the sponsors and the partners, I'm looking for trouble. If I don't have a good relationship with the chairman in the regions, I'm looking for trouble. Because those are the guys that will ask, why is so-and-so not from my region in the team? You're looking for trouble. But you can deal with those stakeholders. Those are just 10, 15 people you need to deal with. I dealt with them, and it was really good. I was really happy. They were happy. The relationship was good. The results were forthcoming. So you don't step out of your, your circle. Yes, play in your band. Stay in your lane. Don't go there, go answer every person that barks something about you. So stay here. If there's a parent that would come through, it would really be out of, listen, I don't know much about football, but can my son not play where? And then I'll make the time. And I'll cut out the time and say, no, Mr. or Mrs., it's actually like this. But I'm not going to spend my time answering to the nation just because I'm a national coach. So you deal with the stakeholders, the immediate stakeholders. And that's where your success lies. Because those are the people that when they go home to their regions, to social media, to the media, when they read, they will tell, the director would say, I spoke to Manetti. That's not what he said. His idea is actually this. And she would influence 10,000 people. So you deal with those stakeholders immediately. Yeah.
Yeah, you're touching on a topic that I want to make a discussion on its own here. But Maya, I want to ask you, as Ricardo is explaining, as a coach you wear so many hats. It's unthinkable. Do you think that federations actually support coaches enough for them to wear all of those hats?
I don't think all federations do it. Some might do it, but I don't think all federations do it. I think the structures in the federations are not always what it should be. To start a sport, you must start with your coaches. And you must start at your grassroots level. There you must have your good coaches, not only men on the street. They actually also should have already high performance coaches. Because if you want to start a sport, if you have to reinvesting in teaching them the right skills, you lose so much time on your athletes. And I think every federation should have a structure in place where they have the correct coaching levels in place with what they should know and teaching the right skills, supporting them.
It sounds like you're saying there should be a national standard for coaches then, within federations. But is it the responsibility of coaches currently, future, former, or is it the responsibility of the federations then to assure that coaches are well looked after?
Well, the federations, they are the head of the sport. So they should have the right management team in place to pull it down to the bottom structure. So if they've got a good governing body in the federations and have a good plan in everything, then they should also have a mindset for what coaching structure they will have in place. So it should be part of the federation, yes.
Jules, do you think it is the responsibility, and I'm going to ask the same question now, the responsibility of coaches to make sure that the Namibian industry knows that this is actually what a coach is supposed to do, apart from coaching? This is everything we're doing. Is it the coach's responsibility to relay that information to the rest of the industry?
I'm not sure if it's the coach's responsibility to relay that information. I think a coach has so much to do that a coach is mostly focused on the job at hand, which is the team, which is transferring the skill or actually getting the team to a level of performance. I think what is needed is some form of professional body or standard so that coaches can belong to, because I think coaches can learn a lot from one another across a multitude of disciplines. I do think if you share knowledge, each one's program become better. I think the federations can have a look at one another to also learn from another where there's successful programs, whether it's grassroots programs, whether it's school programs, whether it's the high performance programs. I think we should move away from each federation or regulatory body being on its own. I think we need to start moving to the modern way of coaching is of sharing. There is no such rubbish anymore as this is the head coach, it's a one-man show, there's only one way, this is the highway. That is 1932 coaching. Coaching nowadays is very much an interactive working together, a bunch of experts and really people with know-how working together towards the same goal. So I do believe in any sport industry, it's better for the industry to work together as a unit. And whether it's boxing or whatever, there's certain things in coaching that remains the same. There are certain things in federation or regulatory bodies that remain the same. That foundation that is a golden thread that goes right through all of us and go through all your levels. And I think that is really important there's a number of coaches that are good enough, and exposed enough and experienced enough to convey that message on behalf of coaches as to what it entails to be a holistic coach. But I do think there are also excellent coaches who are not as well versed or does not have such charismatic personalities themselves to convey that message, that can also contribute in a very fruitful way to making the coaching position in itself better. But in my humble opinion, there is a shortfall in terms of the collaboration all over the show to get to a better place. And a coach can advocate as to what they do, but if a federation doesn't have capable, very able management, administration that understands the cycles of coaching, the cycles of pinnacle events, then there will not be synergy built from one level to the next level to complement one another. And maybe if it's not possible to create that vertical integration between the systems, then it's better to learn from one another in a system where you can see, say for instance, cricket is incredibly successful. Let's have a look at what they've done to get to that success, and not be shy to look at yourself, be honest about where you fall short, and because there's no shame in not being there yet. It's you on the way. You just need to have the guts to admit you're not there, but you're on the way there. And like I said, backstage, and I think it's across all disciplines, we have the most incredible athletes. We just lack in other areas that is needed to take sport to a global platform where it deserves this attention. And it's such a good thing for a community and for these kids and everyone involved in it, that it's such a useful tool. You might as well utilize it to its full potential. We're going to get great citizens from sport programs or whatever, whether it's gymnastics or swim or whatever. It's a big thing for becoming a good citizen of the land of the brave.
I can almost say amen to that. Shawan, Jules is really touching on that we should be working interdisciplinary, and that athletics and netball should be working together to forward not only athletics and netball, but the industry itself. Do you also think, because I see that this is a trend now among schools, that sport codes are fighting for athletes currently? Because the netball athlete is also the athletics athlete, she's also a gymnast, and she's pulled in 5 different directions. Do you think that approach would then also mitigate that issue?
Two, three, four. Okay, I do think so, but I just have to say that first of all is, in order for any other sport to be successful, you need to have athletes. So track and field is like top of the, top of the list. We developed you all your body parts, first of all. But I do think so, and the big problem is when we look at school sports, first of all, it's overlapping. We just discussed it backstage about rugby used to start in April, school athletics would be finished, and then all the other winter sports starts, and then people split. And I had this discussion with a couple of parents last time. I said, the biggest problem we have, why we don't have so many professionals, is because the netball player at school level does athletics, does hockey. It overlaps, it causes a lot of injuries, it causes a lot of confusion. The kid doesn't know. But I also think it's up to the coaches and the parents to be honest and to say, you know what, I can give me 5 years of your time. If you don't make it as an athlete, you can always go play rugby or netball or cricket or whatever. But that's why the main reason we don't have a lot of professional athletes is the kid doesn't know what to choose until he's 18 or 19 after school. Then sometimes it's too late, especially for sports like gymnastics, football, very technical, rugby is the same, you see. And I do think that we need to split all the sports, work together at the same time, but don't overlap one another. And then we need to identify, your athletes. When I say athlete, I mean all sports coach, all sports personalities, and we need to identify them in what they are good at. I cannot have a rugby player that plays football, and just because we want to make money of them, we allow them to come, and we are not honest with them, and we do them harm, we do our own reputation harm, and that's what's going on now. Because we have so many good sprinters and distance runners and all these athletes, but because of confusion at school, and the school is demanding, there's so much high demand because they want you to be good in whatever. If you perform for the school, then it means you're going to get a bursary, or it means you're going to go to a better university. It doesn't always happen like that, but those are the promises and that the schools make. And for instance, for me, it is difficult to make a promise to a kid because I can't offer him a bursary, and that has to change. We need to find a way to assist those type of athletes, that they don't get lost in the system. And then, like in South Africa, I know in PE, we used to have under 15s at higher level because they have so many athletes. Under 15s in UPE alone, from the schools level, that's 2003, they got 5,000 a month assistance, but it was split up. Physiotherapy, food, your parents, transport. So those kids had no stress. See, but also, they know they have to choose one sport because it's not everybody that becomes a Springbok or Protea or netball player. So you have to choose, and you have to be honest with yourself and give yourself 5 years, guide the kids, teach them, show them that you sacrifice 10 years of your life and it can set you up for a lifetime. But it comes into us as coaches to be honest and speak to the parents, get involved for the federation. And I like to touch on the subject also about maybe it's time the coaches do get in contact with the federations and tell them what we need as coaches. Because sometimes the people at the top, they don't know what we go through. You know, it doesn't have to be a whole sermon, but just tell them, you know what, in order for me to have made it as an athlete, I needed this, I made this mistakes, and I made those mistakes. But if I eliminate all of those and I replace it with these type of things, you know, then we can be successful. But sometimes the people at the top, they also, I almost want to say, for lack of a better word, because they are above us in the federations, they are almost embarrassed to ask for assistance. And the unfortunate thing about Namibia is you only get support when you've made it. So we need to change that, or we need to help people make it, and then we make a change after they've made it. Now we can use them to set up a proper structure that will last for, and not just for 2 years or 3 years, but we need long-term goals, we need short-term goals, micro goals, you know, daily goals, just not to swear at somebody. That's a goal in myself, for me, you know. So we need to set, and we need to keep the athlete responsible for whatever action he or she makes.
You highlighted so many questions. My mind is in 5 different directions. But I want to ask you, you said that maybe it's time coaches tell the federations what they need. Shouldn't we think that the administrators already know what the coaches need?
Sometimes we think they do, but it's not always like that. And sometimes maybe they do, but they don't know what we've been through and how we got there. And they don't know that Kazanda woke up at 4 in the morning to go and practice because it's not a professional sport. And then you practice from 5 to 7, go to work, come back, train again from 5 to 9. Football is the same. But if we can get the sponsorships involved and get the federation involved and say, you know what, we see what you're doing and we acknowledge it. But with a little bit of more information and more knowledge, we can push this a little further. Because sometimes they do know, but they don't know how to implement it. And sometimes we know how to implement it, but we don't know how to get all the parties together. And we need to come up with one common goal, and we have to switch our mindsets off. Instead of being competitive and trying to prove a point, we make a difference. And that is going to change the whole aspect.
I wanna come in there.
Please do.
Sorry for that.
Switch off your
Is
mic.
my mic still on?
Switch it off. So I was talking about more.
So I think the point there that Sherwin just made is a very important and a very fundamental point in the sense of a coach, especially a national coach. And I will speak where I was working now. A national coach, you are not only a father figure, not only a motivator, not only a psychologist, not only a technocrat or a coach that, hey, left to right or whatever the case is. You are carrying a cap to say that there's some prestige to this job. And that prestige, an administrator usually don't know about. Because maybe the secretary general that you're working with, or the president you're working with, or whoever that's your boss, doesn't know high performance coaching. And it's not his or her duty to know. Because she or he came in that position as the best administrator. Not as the best coach that's going to lead the association. Not as the best football expert that's going to lead the association. They lead the association when it comes to the administrative part. So I agree with Sherwin that we as coaches, we also need to up our game and say, listen, let me go to my leadership and explain to them that this is what professional football is about. This is what an athlete needs to eat, how he needs to sleep. Yes, they need to know that, but currently, if they don't, I think it's our responsibility to go and table that specific or those specific demands to them. Because if you go into the Commonwealth as chef de mission, and the people that sent you there has no clue about it, you can't go to Birmingham and get there and say, wow, there's a heat wave. Wow, it's raining. What are we going to do? You know, the government there did nothing for us, and our federations are sleeping and all that. We, the experts, so us as experts need to go to the administrator and say, yes, Mr. or Mrs. Administrator, you're the expert here. Mr. Coach is an expert here. Now, Mr. Coach needs this and why you need it. So I just want to share a short life story with you because I think I will miss, or people will miss this valuable information that I'm going to give. So I played professional football in Cape Town. And I'm not here to pat myself on the back, on the shoulder, or whatever. When I came back, I've realized that, oops, there's a gap in terms of where I've been. I played there for 10 years. Now I come back to Namibia, and there's that gap. How am I going to narrow the gap? Yeah, and expected. And I didn't blame anyone. I went to my leadership and I said, leadership, do you want to qualify for AFCON? Leadership said, it's why we appointed you. I said, wow, okay, do you know what it comes with? They said, it's all on you. I said, no, it's all on the director. It's all on the minister. It's all on parliament. It's all on the secretariat. It's all on the presidency. It's all on my technical team. If you don't understand that concept, we can forget about starting to train on Monday. So first understand that concept. And I was blessed with leadership all around that understood. The ministry understood what I was talking about. My leadership within the secretariat understood what I was talking about. So I'm basically just giving an example. And from that point onwards, they looked at the national team, the athletes, the players differently. And I introduced a system to say that leadership, forgive me for my French, but I want a concept where it's player first. If you ask, you know, there's people that are Christians, if you sit somewhere and you want to do something bad, you ask, what would Jesus do? And then you realize Jesus won't do this, so don't do it. So I asked my leadership and I said, is this beneficial for the player? Player first concept. And they said, oh, this guy's challenging us. Some maybe felt we need to get him out because his demands are too high. Because my thing was, do you think a player should sleep in a 1-star bed and breakfast? No, I don't think. Okay, so let's get a 5-star. Do you think a player should have one ball at training? No. I think there should be 30 balls. Now let's get the 30 balls. And when those things would change, then my leadership realized, wow, results are coming. And they came on board. So back to Sherwin, I think us as the experts, our leadership of federations are not the experts on the training field. They are not the experts in terms of how we relate to players. So it's on us to sell that to them and tell them that it's so important how players react. Right? And an extension to the point, because you're not going to ask me this. I'm so sorry. But we sit there, we have a lot of criticism towards the government. Government is not giving this. Government is not, the ministry. Manuel, please. NFA, currently we at civil war. Everyone knows. We have civil war. We haven't had football for 3 years because of infighting. But I just want to say that infighting will stop. We will get back to our best. But in fact, in actual fact, if you take, let me just throw something to you quickly. Our population is 2.5 million or 3 million. For those guys that didn't do the census, let's say 3 million. Compare this nation with its infrastructure, resources, even when it comes to rugby, any other sports code, compare it to a country similar to our size. Compare us to Eswatini. Compare us to Lesotho. Compare us to Botswana. Compare us to Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Malawi, Madagascar. Those are our guys. Same population size, same problems. Have we outperformed them or not? We did, we have. Our boxers, come on. Yes, they have their complaints. Our football is not on at the moment, but for the last 5-6 years, we qualified twice to CHAN without a league. Yeah, and government assisted us. We qualified to AFCON without a league. We have the best player currently in South Africa, Shalulile, with all these problems.
But we still need a league.
But we still need a league. I'm not saying anything. We still need it. So sometimes we get so caught up in the hype of criticism, that buzz. I just want to get on and say how weak the NFA is, how weak government is, how weak this one is. We have actually punched above our weight for many years. And we need to acknowledge that and give ourselves a round of applause. Literally, yes. Netball has done well with what they have. Their cricket, come on. Yeah, I mentioned boxing, I mentioned our football, I'm mentioning rugby. They're going to the World Cup again. Athletics. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so sometimes we get so caught up in this hype of there's something wrong. Sometimes there's nothing wrong. It's just that our circumstances don't allow us to get to that Arsenal or Chelsea or Usain Bolt level or whatever the case is. So if we start working collectively as a country, as a nation, to say that let us improve our infrastructure and everyone hold hands, your concept, and start holding hands, we will even perform 10 times better than what we are doing at the moment. So I just needed to get that off my chest.
Amen.
Thank you.
You guys are really wanting me to say amen and hallelujah, yeah, really. But Chrysander, Ricardo touched on something that I really want to ask. I sit with a question, and it's definitely the coach's responsibility to make sure it's coached properly. It's the administrator's responsibility to administer properly. But don't you think an administrator that really understands sport and the sport industry would know what the coach needs?
Yeah, it's not easy going after Ricardo, man. Long speech, but we would think that they do know, but many a times they haven't found themselves in a position where they were exploited in such a way that they needed to learn through an experience. So it's many times that we get administrators from different backgrounds, from different sports codes that cross-code, goes from Ministry of Environment and Tourism, and then next thing you know, you get an administrator moving into the Ministry of Sport. No, that's why we're here. And so we'd like to think that they do know, but it's all about that continuous development. I think if there's clear-cut standards, rules, set in stone that this is what the players needs are, this is what the coaches needs are, that there'd be uniformity, and we'll know the direction we're moving in. We'll know what's required. We know where we're at the moment, and then we'll also know where we need to go. So I think we would like to think that all administrators know what they're doing, but it's all about that continuous learning process. We need to educate ourselves, and we need to educate them at the same time they educate us. So I'd like to. It's sort of a grey area, if I may call it that, and it's difficult because, like that's why we're here tonight to discuss all these issues we have, but then also the positives as well. And we as coaches, you get to a point where you feel that, wow, I'd like to do this, I'd like to do that, but then with the resources we have, and if I may call it limited at the moment, because Ricardo mentioned there's no league for soccer. We've got 2.5, 3 million people. We love soccer. We're a football playing nation. We're a rugby playing nation. And if we don't administer the sport correctly, that's what happens. You get situations where there's no leagues. You get situations where there's infighting. And the players, unfortunately, are the ones that are negatively affected through that. And that's an injustice. I mean, it should never be personal. I mean, we shouldn't make sport our everything, but we should create an opportunity for our brothers and our sisters to get onto a level where they can exploit their talents in such a way that they can create a life for themselves, for their families, for the ones coming after that. So it's back to the point, or back to the question. Administrators, managers in sport, directors, the top level. If we want to create an atmosphere, an environment where everyone can flourish, I think it should never become personal. It shouldn't be the me. It shouldn't be Krazander. It should be the sport. It should be athletics. And that's why we are here tonight. I think we're all sport lovers. And also, like Ricardo mentioned now, there's something that's been bugging me that I wanted to say, and I'm going to get it out now as well. So, so 2 more minutes. And I think we've all mentioned, Jules mentioned that we should share more within sport fraternities, within sports coach. Sherwin mentioned the administrative side. We should share with them so they know exactly what we need, and they understand where they are, what they have. But then I'd like to challenge, because I'd like to challenge coaches all over Namibia, because we're a diverse nation. We, from Katima all the way to Ludritz, we'll drive for 2 days. But then it's so easy nowadays to jump onto social media, get a number on WhatsApp or whatever, come into contact with the people that you've worked with before. If you were on a rugby tour or football tour all the way from Shakati, you came to Windhoek and you played against Stasi or someone, get the number from the coach. Ask him like, okay, so coach, what do you do differently to what we do? Put that structures in place. It's going to make yourself better. It's going to make the team better. It's going to develop the individual. So I'd like to challenge all the coaches, and especially, okay, my fellow brothers and sisters are here for other sports, but for rugby as well, because we've got a lack of outreach at the moment in Namibia, because it's difficult. It's difficult to drive to the Caprivi quickly and then come back after the weekend. It's difficult to drive to the south, and they feel like sport is centralized at the moment, so everything happens in Windhoek. But if possible, we'd like to do outreach and obviously get in touch with rugby players in Gubabas and rugby players in Shakati. That's in an ideal and perfect world. But then it all starts with the small things. Initiate things. Don't be scared to take that risk, to take that chance. So I'd like to challenge all coaches, whether be it, like we discussed, whether you're coaching an under-7 team, whether you're coaching a high-performance squad, whoever you're coaching, exploit yourself, do an outreach, get a number,
and then just come into contact with the right people, because like you've all heard, we've all started somewhere. He's coached under 7 kids. She's coached gymnastics. She's coached swimming. So let's share the wealth. Let's share the knowledge. I think that's my challenge tonight, and obviously what I wanted to say.
Sure.
Amen.
So much wisdom, eh? Maya, I want to ask you, and I know I'll be stepping on toes most probably, but we all know about the article that was placed last week about the coaches' salaries going around. Maybe you missed it coming back from the Commonwealth. But do you think it's because coaches still are on the notion of I'm doing it for the love of the sport and the athlete, that maybe they're not complaining about being paid enough, or because it's a full-time job? I mean, listening to you guys, it's a full-time job being a coach. So is it because they, like I said, they're still on the notion of it's for the love of the sport? Even though I might consider myself a professional, I'll let this one slide because of the athletes. Is that the right notion to have?
No, a coach should also be seen as any other professional. They should also earn their money because it's part of the industry. So I don't think the main interest of a coach is always we serve the athlete, fine, okay. We do everything to pick that athlete up, that they can perform to the best, but it doesn't have to be as a volunteer. I think the mindset must change, that at the end it is a professional job as well. So why should it always be as a volunteer?
So the suggestion Jules made of coaches working together, the industry working together, do you think that's going to mitigate the issue of coaches not being paid or being underpaid? So the suggestion Jules is making of the coaches coming together, working together, the entire industry working together to improve the industry, do you think that is something that would mitigate the problem of coaches being underpaid currently in Namibia? Shawan, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it will send a message to the rest of the country to say that coaches, it's not just about the love of the sport. The love of the sport don't pay your bills. You see? I always tell my athletes, now I understand what my coach used to say. I sleep at night thinking, why is Sean not moving his arms? Now I analyze those things at night, and it takes a lot of time analyzing while you're sleeping. It gives you sleepless nights. So is this thing on again?
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, it is going to mitigate. It is going to make people aware about the coaches. It's going to make them aware that there is coaches. They have a life, but they do sacrifice as much as the athlete. They sacrifice just as much, and we need to compensate them. It's going to, for me, I work with parents, but maybe it will send a message to the parents as well. You know, it's not just going to, because I don't know, is technical coaches professional? Yes. Oh yeah? Yes. Oh, okay, I need to register. So, because we just, and it's for the love of the sport. It is. It's unfortunately, should I say fortunately or unfortunately? Fortunately, no?
Yeah.
It's for the love of the sport, and we love doing it because we can only we can only give what we've been given and what we've been taught. So, and we've been given so much love. I mean, I'm from Valpas, he's from Valpas, and it was at the time we used to brag. Everything good comes from Valpas. You know, the Bible says, "What good comes from Nazareth?" But everything good came from Valpas. Harry Simon, with our whole world, we have so many sports personalities.
Bijna.
And if you look at my coach now, he says, "Sharon, don't ever do it for the love of the sport," because he did it for the love of the sport. And even though he wants to get back into it, but he's not feeding his family. And so we need to just yeah, maybe that will send a message that coaches does matter at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I want to ask this question to the panel, so anyone's welcome to answer. But do you think it's because coaches are not being regulated in Namibia that coaches are underpaid? And do you think if you are regulated where you can actually, there's a professional body, you can register as a coach, doesn't matter the code. You register as a coach, you do continuous professional development, etc., etc. If you're regulated as such, do you think you'd be paid better?
I'll go first. I think yes, definitely. The first thing that a professional body does, it ensures the coaches are of a certain level. It ensures coaches working with kids have done child safety. It ensures coaches working with high performance athletes have done drug-free sport. It ensures those coaches that are abusive in terms of verbal abuse or any of that, the emotional well-being play a first type of concept. It's part of your professional qualification. So it will give anyone who wants to make use of the service of a coach, would give them peace of mind that they can expect a certain level of expertise, and together with that expertise, a certain level of competence and trust in the system. For a coach, it would also give protection not to be abused from the other side either, that you are not expected to work for free, or you're not expected to be treated like inappropriately, because you actually do have an education that proves that you are professionally qualified and you belong to a body that takes care of the interest of this group of coaches. In this professional body, obviously you will have level 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, whatever the case might be. You would have provincial coach developers, you'll have master coach developers, you'll have national coach developers, all those things. So in essence, because you would have this body, you would also be able to improve and grow the quality of the coaches in the various sporting codes as well. It would also ensure that someone with the appropriate expertise would be paid more than somebody else with less expertise. Because it is like they are saying, doing something for the love of the game, don't put food on the table. And being passionate about it doesn't grow it. I've seen in my own sport, doing it for the love of the game does not ensure being treated well. If you insist on being paid, money is found to be paid. So once we create the expectancy that you have to pay for expertise, you will be treated with more respect in terms of a coach. Because many of the coaches that are passionate about it is most probably the most valuable coaches that you will have in the various sporting coach at the various levels, because they've got such a passion for it that money is not the driving factor. If the money was the first factor driving it, then it would be rotten from the start. So I do believe that it would add value to the quality of coaching, it would add value to the industry, and it would actually standardize coaching across the board. So I think there are many more benefits of it. And the continuous professional development will also ensure that another part, what we spoke earlier about backstage, S&C across foundations, phases for all various sporting codes, overcoming the overlapping in schools, you will bypass all of that once you have a system like that in place.
Definitely. Chrysander, do you agree with Jules?
I just wanted to add on what Jules said. Yeah, what a board like a coaching regulatory board would allow is it's professionals, coaches being coached by coaches. So it would create an opportunity where we all could join a team, and then
obviously have that system in place where we funnel in new coaches, exploit them, give them obviously the knowledge they need and the requirements in order to, let's say in rugby we've got the levels, so you've got level 1, level 2, level 3, and then obviously you do specialized training as well. But then it will allow coaches being coached by coaches. So at the end of the day, it won't be, and that's where we are moving. We are moving towards a professional era in sport, because all we do is we are judged on the results at the end of the day. So us saying that we're doing it for the love of the game, for it's a passion. Yes, it is a passion. I don't think you'll be able to do it just for money, because sooner or later you'll fall out of love with that sport. So we need to realize that you are judged on the results, yes, but then also there should be a drive, and there shouldn't be any question marks regarding your commitment, number one, and then obviously your passion, number two. But then you need to be compensated in such a way that it allows you to do it and to give everything at the end of the day. Like we just mentioned, waking up at 4 a.m., obviously driving to get there, participating, and keeping that energy and the information to such a knowledge and an extent that everyone is excited, always wants to learn, and creating a positive environment. So it becomes difficult at the end of the day. But then what Jules mentioned is, with a board like that, you'd allow expertise to funnel through, and then it will better the entire sport fraternity, because you get coaches being coached by coaches, and who better to go to and get answers to. Like I always say to each and everyone that asks me a question, so I'm not just going to shoot and give you an answer. If I don't have an answer, give me a day, then I'll come back to you. Immediately I'll go on my phone, call the relevant people I know, and then ask them, have you been in such a situation? Do you have an answer for me? What can I tell the person? And I think at the end of the day, that's where we are headed, the professional era, and that's the only way we are going to become a top tier nation in any type of sport. Yes, we're doing well, like Ricardo mentioned. We're qualifying for top level tournaments. Cricket joined the rugby now, qualifying for World Cup, and so
Just sliding it in there.
congrats to them as well. And for a long time, we were the only sports code. But then, we want more. We don't want just us thriving. We want the entire nation thriving. So, and at the end of the day, government is going to help each and every sports code the same, and that's what we want.
I want to add on that. Sorry.
Please do.
But in individual sport, like in group sport settings, all good and well. In sports that is exposed in school levels, all good and well. You can do that and there will be money. But a sport that hasn't been in school systems for years, a sport like gymnastics, no one do gymnastics anymore. Not everyone can be a runner. Everyone can be a gymnast. Everyone can run. Everyone wants to play rugby. Everyone wants to play soccer. Everyone wants to do netball. But gymnastics is a different sport, especially with our main sports. That's where it gets sad. It's such an excellent sport for development from a young age. And if it can be brought back into school systems, then maybe financially gymnastics can be benefits from a body that regulates the coaches. But with a sport group that is so small, where you only have gymnasts almost left in Windhoek, our gymnast doesn't have competition in all levels across Namibia anymore. We have only 5 clubs in Namibia, which are only 3 are registered with the federations. So that's where it gets difficult. That's where you still do it for the love of the sport and not for the money.
It's a good thing that you're touching on, but now I want to ask you, don't you think creating such a regulatory board for coaches would then in turn also help pick up sports like gymnastics and your smaller sports who are not seen as your priority codes? Don't you think something like that would then help pick them up and help?
I hope so. I truly do hope so, that something like that will pick it up again, and that there will be more clubs created, and that there will be more exposure for the sport group. Because I feel, your smaller groups, sport groups, that is such a beautiful sport. And everyone always watches gymnastics when it comes to Olympic and Commonwealth because it's gorgeous to look at it. But no one knows where to go for it in a place like Namibia. And I do feel if we can bring it back alive again and let more people see the sport and them know that it still exists in Namibia, then yes, I think it will be fabulous.
So, panel, I want to ask or touch on a last topic before I'm going to open the floor for questions. And all of you have touched on this, talent identification and development. You spoke a lot about it, Shawan, so I'm going to start with you, I think. Do you think it's something that's being done? Do you think it's needed in Namibia?
When it comes to different sporting codes, yes, then it's very much needed because we used to do a lot of development in the 90s. I think in the 90s there used to be a lot of coaching clinics all over, and I used to be a part of that. And I still think we lost our way a bit because we found something to blame, like the lack of money, which is it's a reality, but we don't have to we didn't have to lose it all. And but I think talent identification it has to be done on a regular basis, so we can, and not just because if you look at the talent that we identify, it's always it is most of our most talented kids is from the rural areas, underdeveloped areas. And you know why it is? Because they are still kids. They climb trees, they play in the river. That's how their body develops. And they're not in front of the TV, they're not in front of social media. I coached in Ochu. Yeah, I coached a couple of kids there. And I said to the kids, "Jong, het julle gekyk daar op what's this? Disney. Disney, what is that Disney? You know, the kids don't know that, and that is actually beautiful. And if I look at the way they play rugby and the way you can identify them so easily. You know, if you go to, we spoke about all the talent that come from Oshakati the other day, and from the north, and the kids come here, and from all the other regions, and they come and beat the kids here. There's the spikes, and as soon as those kids go back, we just forget about that. We just keep on saying next year, oh, those kids from the north, they come here, and they eat burgers, and they go running, and they come first by 2 laps or in the 1,500 or whatever, but we forget about them. So identifying talent is very easy, but what do we do after that? Do we get them? Do we groom them? Do we have a plan for them? Or are we just selling dreams to one another? Say, hey, check, this is excellent. But it's just a conversation that we would like to have amongst each other, so we can sound like we know what we're talking about. So identifying is so much easier than just to take them, get them in the system, and actually develop them instead of just identifying them.
So, Ricardo, it sounds like to show in the development side is missing a bit, or it's lacking. Is that the same in football, or is it in all codes that it's something that's lacking?
Sure. In football, it's I show in terms of your best talent is always, sorry for the Vandu guys, it's always outside. If you look at the composition of the national team, most of the people just look at a name and the club the player plays for, and most of the clubs are in Vandu. But all those clubs feed from the regions. So you would get a player from Ongwediva playing for Tigers Football Club, for instance, and then people would think, oh, Tigers is a Vandu club, it's a Vandu player. No, the players come from outside. And there is informal development. So I want to just make sure that the audience doesn't lose me. You get informal development. It still takes place. Because we have the saying in coaching and in football, the game is the best teacher. So what happens in your villages is actually the game itself, the football god itself, developing those kids. So informally there's development happening, but not formal development. So formal development is now but we would say your academies, your more structured, where there's a coach, there's a football field, you have proper balls, there's a goal, and the coach has a plan in terms of how to develop and not make a 11-year-old run 5 kilometers while the muscles haven't developed properly. Stuff like that. While the kids in the regions, they more informal. But I have to mention the fact that development is the most overused word in football in our sports code. Everyone is talking, yeah, we must do development, yeah, we must do this, yeah, that. And unfortunately, we are not matching African standards, and we are not matching world standards when it comes to development. So then you will ask the question now, how does a player like a Shalulile or Dion Hoto or a Lloyd, where do they come from and how did they get to that stage? It was via the informal development for the amount of times they've played. So these boys play, if they schooling at whatever high school, they play during break time. They go sweaty into the next class and the teacher is angry. You guys were playing during break time, now you are all sweaty. After that, they stay behind or they go to the next soccer field and continue that process. So the games start teaching them and they get the upper hand on the boys in Windhoek that only train twice a week. Because in Windhoek it's a different structure. You need to go pick up your kid. Then you need to go drop the kid. And then the academy where the kid is can only absorb the kid Tuesday and Thursday. While your boys in the regions, they play every day. So if we look at the amount of touches a boy take in the regions versus a Windhoek boy, that boy has more touches on the ball. He has a better relationship with the ball. His development and holistic development is much physical development, much better than the boy in Windhoek. Because it's like, to bring it into perspective, it's like sending your kid to school. Say, I'm sending my kid to a private school. Yes, got money, I'm sending him there. But we're only going to school on Monday and Wednesdays. And then you expect to graduate top of the class, and you expect to hit grade 12 and go to university. It's not going to happen. So if Namibia, if we realize to say that if we can put structured development into the regions, because they're the majority, into the regions, and ask these coaches to coach every day after training, we will even have players that are 10 times better than the ones we're having at the moment.
So on the talent and talent identification thing and the academies and all that, it's all good and well. That's when you realize, okay, this guy, he has what it takes, but that's only at that specific age. So I'm a believer in we should create the same platform for each and every one. So yes, you might be lucky to get scouted and go into an under 9 academy or an under 11 or under 13 academy. But what about the player that develops after that? What about the player that doesn't have the talent when he's 11 years old, who doesn't shine like the guy next to him, but then works twice as hard as that player in the next 5 years and blooms and becomes a better player? Because there's many examples like that. You get guys that excel at junior level, under 13, and then their interest disappears. I mean, yes, they've got the talent, but then, like we all know, hard work beats talent every day. So, I with that, it's all good and well. I love the idea. It's great, and I think it will automatically make us better. Yes, as a rugby playing or as a sport playing nation. But then, in all sports codes, we should have processes in place where there's a platform for the late bloomers as well to keep on identifying players that have what it takes in order to make it. So I would like to touch on that as well. So I wanted to mention it.
Thank you so much, Sander. Maya, I want to ask you, just for the sake of knowledge, can we draw a difference between grassroots level development and the rest of the development, or is all development the same thing?
I think I've got something different in mind. Not answering your question. I think we have to create a healthy society and get more sport in the complete society. That means even at a creche level, then at school level. Why is there no PE in school anymore? There's professional people teaching them. I remember my days, in summer we were swimming and we were out on the field playing, and in winter we were in a hall and we did gymnastics and we jumped over the bars and whatever. What happened to this? And that is also development. That is things which everybody should be able to do. Some do it better and others not. But that's where the sport starts, and that's where we create a healthy society. And that's also part of grassroots at the end. So I think we must rethink the whole sports society in Namibia and create a different mindset that will, everything will become better.
Jules, do you agree with her?
I do. And I also think incorporated in that, besides being in the school system, we've moved away from club sport as a whole. We say, for instance, club sport involves junior sport. It involves mum playing some sport, dad playing some sport, the high school kids playing for some teams, the preschoolers, the toddlers playing for some team. Just whether it's participation or social or competitive, whatever, we've moved away from that concept where we're healthy on Saturday afternoons. Now we end up drinking on Saturday afternoons or having crap food or sitting couch potatoes in front of TV, stuff like that. We've changed behavior, and the behavior that we've changed is not always to the benefit of ourselves and of creating good habits. Like sport is a good habit. It's like Maya's saying, it's a fantastic habit to get. So I do agree, and through this type of concept where you have informal development and informal TID and formal TID, you will be able to cater for the late bloomer, for the appropriate age developer, and also for the kid who start off doing it as he got suspended from the one, so he went to the next. You will also catch those players in there, and they might now be doing this sport, but next year they will be our number one in boxing or whatever the case might be. So I think it does start with a healthy society, and I think it does start with families spending time together in a useful way, which is most of the time is sport, and helping grow through that structure. It will also help us to not lose as many through the transition periods of school to tertiary to the workplace, that type of thing. People will be healthier for longer if they're involved with, and it creates that wonderful thing where you are a tiger and I'm a black Africa. And when it's Derby Day, it's on. And I think we miss a lot of that with the way that we've changed our behavior. And, you know, I was thinking earlier when Chantal was saying about the gymnastics and stuff like that. If these clubs are there, then some kids who would never have had the opportunity to be exposed to gymnastics if they don't live in Windhoek and they are not familiar with the club, then they will actually have exposure to some a different sport. I mean, archery or any of those sports. I did my archery qualification. She was my instructor, okay, on a place called Kois, where Google doesn't even know where you are, okay? So there's these wonderful opportunities where you can get to run into a different sporting code and you could actually fall in love with it for life. So, yeah, I think those are very good foundational points to start from.
Definitely. I'm now going to open the floor to our audience for questions. The gentleman at the back with the red cap.
Die mic. Hier is ook een mic. Weet I know.
Check met die. Check die hele mics in die wêreld.
Maybe you can stand up so the panel can see you, and then you can just say your name.
I think I'm okay when I see that.
Okay.
Okay, actually, okay, good evening. I'm a bit came in late, yeah, but I've catch up a lot. So this is specifically to those that I know in front of Sean and Maneti. You guys have been on the ground, and you are now in administration. And I've been in sport for more than 20 years. Understand, I've achieved all, but my situation is here. You guys, you know the truth that the system which we are using is wrong. Understand? For the next generation, what do you expect? Do you want the generation keep going? And what you've been saying there, having sport happening in the country, but you praise about Sharolile and others that are doing it well in South Africa, but you pass same Nioma, you find the lamps on, and when you ask what's going on there, you say the league or it's a tournament, which is not proper managed. The nation doesn't know. What plan do you have for generation? Do you want them to still going on same as you have went through while you've been ambassading in South Africa for more than 10 years, or being seen the truth? Do you want sport to keep going like that? My proposal and what I know, the current system, you have found it there, and you know it's wrong, and you know the truth because we have been on the ground in administration, you know the right thing that needs to be done. When are we going to stand? Like me, I'm also aging up, and I know we need to do the right things so that we can have the generations in the right path. So one thing again I should say is that, do you think it's the right thing for the generation to come so they cannot own any property in the country coming from their talent? Understand? While we have enough resources, minerals, tourism bond coming in. So my point is here, I don't know, I have a lot to say, maybe I should end, because if I start saying we won't finish. Because, yeah.
Okay, I think that one is oh, should I answer? Okay, I think it's more football related, because if I listen to the examples and so on. Yes, obviously, coming from a professional background, and you've been there yourself, it's not nice to see that there's no league football. It's not nice to see that we are still crying about development. It's not nice to see that our stadia is not in a proper condition. And I don't want anyone to get me wrong when I made the example of saying that we have actually performed with all of these things being wrong. So I was referring to that specific talent, that individual player, that we have enough talent, because look at what we have achieved. And I'm not agreeing, and I want to put this on record, I'm not agreeing with the current status quo in terms of that a 17-year-old or 15-year-old boy doesn't know about his future when it comes to football. So there, I'm totally with you. I'm not in agreement of it, and we need to get our house in order in terms of starting football as soon as possible. Also to make sure that these boys that do it for the love of the game are in an environment that is structured, that's in an environment that gives them hope, and that we are not selling fake dreams to them. So I am all for that in terms of it. So there's a lot of wrong things that we can single out and talk about. But the fact of the matter remains is that we have achieved over the years, but it's still not right to say that we have no league. We need to get ours in order. That's basically it. And I think our leadership here agrees with me that we are not in a situation where we sit and say, it's fine, it's good and well. I was a professional, now I'm back, I started coaching, so it went well for me. It's saddening, it's very bad to see that the next generation can't follow in Shalulile's footsteps. So it's a big concern, and I'm totally in agreement.
May I? Okay. My name is Bernard Baeva. I just want to thank you to all the 6 panels. The discussion is quite important since I'm here. This year we started a football academy called Kamore Football Academy. We are participating in the Hopesall League. And when we started, myself, I used to be a footballer. I used to play first division for a club called Ventuk United FC. Being a player and when I started coaching, when we started the academy, is 2 different things. Because as a player, you have your own way of how you played and your discipline and how you go about things. But it was so good for me to learn from the panel, from athletics, football, rugby, gymnastic, and netball as well. So it's sort of a learning curve on like when we started and where we are now. Like, you know, some of the smaller kids are really problematic, and you have the like at under 15 level where a guy is so good, but then he's not disciplined. So whereby now you say you have to sell the ideology of that you would want, or you would work in the best interest of him to say, I'm here for you, but then we are here for a common goal. So all in all, yeah, I can attest to that. And then the other thing is that with talent identification, in our under 11, we have about 2 or 3 kids that are so good. So will it now this is from the whole panel now, because I think it's at sports level. Like if we identified certain talent of certain kids, I mean, will it depend to us as an academy to see how, in terms of our goals that we have, where we're going, for us to be able to keep them, to keep the consistency and the momentum to bring them somewhere, or will it be only maybe to keep them unless, like for them to graduate each and every year to say they were under 11, probably next year they will be under 12, under 13, under 15, yeah.
Yeah, just on that, I'd like to think that from a young age, as you just mentioned, where you identify players, you mentioned the guy is so good, but that from a young age, I'd like to think that you would define that player and tell him that, listen, you have the talent, but you still need to, you require to do this, that, and that for the next 2 years, that in the next 3 years, in order to reach your goals. And you mentioned going through the age groups, being the best in that age group, but then at the end of the day, all that effort, the development in the academy, the end goal should be to play at the highest level and represent your country. So all the sacrifice that goes into starting from a young age, giving up your time to play, your time to learn, your time to study, you should really basically decide when you're younger if you want to make it, or if you're doing it just for social reasons, to be part of the crowd just because you enjoy it, because you want to go to training with your friend and go there again next year. But then going through that age group level, you need to decide whether you just want to play it because you love the sport, or whether you want to play at the highest level, and ultimately, I don't know, making a job out of it, creating a life for yourself. I think that should be the end goal, and it all comes back to the previous question as well. If that happens, then you can create something which you can fall back on one day. And that should be the end goal for all of us, to be professionals in what we do, starting from a young age, in order to play at the highest level and then represent the country, which is our land of the brave.
Yeah, to play for your country when the time is right. But the most important thing is for you not to lose interest in the kid before he's a soccer player. So you need to keep the fire burning. You need to keep the flame, and you need to also be honest with yourself and with the person and with the athlete, to say, you know what, I can take you. Our academy can take you to this level. And after this, we would like to see you perform at a higher level. So we can only offer you this. So but we are affiliated with this academy that can take you to the next level. But it's up to you, to keep that kid to being a kid while they are developing. I see, and that is the most important thing, because they believe in you, and you need to continue believing in them, but also believing in your ability. And your ability to say, to acknowledge that I can only go up to this far, unless your club is developing every year and you are affiliated. But the people don't understand is when you have a club or an academy, you need to be affiliated with other academies that is more structured, that is more developed. And when that honesty comes in, I'm telling you now, for you to see a kid at another club perform and reach his goals, it will be so heartwarming and it will be worthwhile.
Yeah.
Okay, my name is Mario. I have a question for Chrysander. Currently we have 95% of our national team. They are professionals, and the 5% is currently the local based. So how big is the gap between the local based players and the professional players? And then I have another question for the netball coach. When players are playing outside of the country, maybe in Romania and in Belgium, do we have scouts following the progress of that player so that player can't be missed for the national team? I have a question for Sherwin. When he ran the 100 meters and 200 meters, did he have a sports agent guiding him through the process, making the difficult decisions? Because sometimes the player doesn't agree with the agent, and the agent is after the big money, and the player wants to go to that team. I have a question for Ricardo. Ricardo played in South Africa, so when he came back, then he did also mention about the gap. So far, in the past 10 years, did that gap close or did it get bigger from his experience? Thank you.
Yes, Mario, thanks for the question. Yeah, you are right. There is a gap between local rugby and local-based players and the guys playing overseas. But the only reason for that is rugby's always been a bit of a winter sport in Namibia. So we've got a league in Namibia where we've got 8 Premier League clubs at the moment, which means once they play each other home and away, they play 16 games, 14 games basically, and that's that. You do qualify for semi-finals if you're lucky, or finals, but then that's it for the rest of the season. It's 16 weeks in a year that's got 52 weeks. Whilst you get the guy that goes through high school, goes to university in South Africa, plays in university tournaments, plays in Currie Cup tournaments, plays in Super Rugby tournaments,
And the only reason why there is a gap, Mario, is because they get exposed and they learn through experience. Okay, so it gets easier for I think each and every sport. Once you find yourself in a position where you have to make a decision, you learn from it. If you make a mistake this time, next time you won't make the same mistake if you find yourself in the same position, or obviously having to make a different type of decision. So the only reason why they are better at the moment is because they get exposed. They play week in, they play week out. And whether it being in the first team or the second team or the third team at some clubs and provincial teams, they do get the exposure they require. But in Namibia, we played, 14 games, and then you're done for the rest of the year. Okay, then the guys play touch rugby, guys play one day of Dolphins tournament, and that's it. So that's the only reason why there's a gap. And then we lose a lot of players in that transition period from high school going into club rugby, because it's not worth it. You get guys that work 8 to 5. So going to a rugby training, getting a coach there that makes you runs for 3 kilometers, it's not fun anymore. So that's the only reason why there's a gap between local players, local based players, and our guys playing overseas.
So, in terms of the scouting of international based players, in terms of the netball world is dominated by an Australian league, a New Zealand league, a UK league, and the closest league to home is the South African league. It is similar to the rugby. These players are mostly high school children that goes to universities on that side, get picked up in the high performance programs of those universities. They excel, they get picked up by the franchises. So we have been in the position where 3 of the players were actually offered UK contracts, and they could actually go and play in the UK. One of them decided to stop playing. 2 of them decided that they love the land of the brave more than they love the money or the British pound. So because we have a different mentality as, I want to say, Namibians, it's not everyone who's good at netball's dream to have an overseas contract. In terms of those players based in South Africa, I'm fortunate. I'm involved in sport businesses on that side as well. So I see my players about every 10 days, and I get to work with them, and most of them are based in Gauteng-based universities at Tuks or at UJ, or just a 2-hour flight down to Marties or at PIC in Potchefstroom. So I get to see them very often, and what we do in one of the businesses where we do grassroots development, we're actually utilizing those players in growing them as holistic players to be coaches as well. So I've incorporated all of them that are in the high performance systems on that side to actually coach in the programs where we coach at the appropriate levels where they would like to learn how to coach. So with them coaching at these clinics where we are, I get to work with them. And it's very nice because they can work with their coaches on that side, but I get to see them very often. And fortunately, netball is a very popular women's sport in South Africa, so it gets televised a lot. So if you don't get to them physically, you can see them over the TV, and you can pick up that phone and you can climb into them just as much as you would physically if they're not on par or not stepping up to the plate.
Agent.
Amazing. Game cool. You know what is the most
You sickle, man.
Is it? Oh. I think the most saddest thing in sport is agents sometimes. Because they don't always have your interest at heart. They're always about the money. And the stupidest thing I did was have a relationship with my agent. Because I do an individual sport. So, and I didn't do negotiations. He negotiated for me. And I would advise athletes nowadays to rather have their coach liaise or a manager this side, locally based, or a lawyer, to work with the agents because you are emotionally drained, you are physically drained, and you devalue yourself based on what the agent is saying, depending on what the agent is or who the agent is. So I had an agent because he was kind of like the local agent for Namibian athletes, and I can say that he didn't care about us. For us, it was about running in his meetings: Finland, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and it was very difficult for us to get into the golden leagues and diamond leagues. I ran 2 or 3, I think, but the problem was not because we were not good enough, because your agent always don't have a good relationship with the big meeting promoters. So, and that also where the problem comes in. So I would say if any athlete, individual sports, football I think is different. The agent, you have to work closely with your agent, right? Because you can't work with the club so often.
Yeah.
But I would say if you do individual sports, rather have your coach communicate with the agent and negotiate, so you can focus plainly on what you are doing and what you do best and focus all your energy there. But to have a relationship with an agent, most of the times it caused strife between me and my coach, because my coach will say your program is 12 weeks, 12 days, which is a 2-week cycle, and the agent says we have 3 races in a row. So you just think 3,000 US, 3,000, 3,000. So you think and you start doing it for the money and you lose focus on what is the bigger goal. So I would say for any young athlete, rather let your coach negotiate and communicate with the agent. You just do what you need to do and do it full-heartedly.
Okay. Mine was the gap.
Why the gap?
Yeah, why the gap? Oh, mind the gap. Yeah. But firstly, I just want to say thank you to my brother here with Windhoek United. I know you've developed a lot of players in the Premier League when it was still on. I think Morgan is still owning the club, né? Yeah, so keep it up and keep the fire burning, as Sherwin said, because you guys are very, very key. The academy, even better, even better. You can start earlier. To answer your question in terms of, I will break it up a little bit. What I was referring to when I meant the gap was in terms of on the field. So the professionalism was really lacking in terms of the presentation on the field from us as coaches, the players, how we went about things on the pitch. But then also, I think there was some improvement when it came to the administrators at that time. I think they were busy with something, but then obviously, we all know, I don't have to say it, you see it in the papers, fights broke out, and that, I think, paralyzed the side from the administrators or the secretariat or the football house, as it's called, and obviously had a ripple effect in the regions, and that actually crippled the whole progress, I would say. I want to give you an interesting statistic why I said the gap narrowed, why I'm saying the gap narrowed. So previously, pre-2010, we would export players mainly to South Africa that would play in the first division or Premier League. And in the 90s, it was us going to South Africa. From 2010 to 2020, we've exported plus minus 50 players outside that left Namibia. So there's a major improvement in terms of that. And a lot of players became professionals. Yes, it was always maybe 2 years, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. But still, we managed to produce via coaches like him, via our other local coaches, to say that we've got a good export number. And that, for me, I think we really narrowed the gap in terms of that the last 10 years. And the last statistic I want to make mention is the current national team. I think now recently we watched COSAFA. We lost in the COSAFA Cup final in our region. So that tells you that that basis that was formed previously is still having a very dominant impact in our national team. And but my brother, he left now when I answered the question. But if we don't start football ASAP, it will bite us in the next 2-3 years to come, because we have robbed players of important 3-4 years of development. We have robbed players of 3-4 years of sharpening their skills and actually getting into or replacing Shalulile. And we will not feel it right now, because we are all happy. We made it to the COSAFA Cup final. We beat so-and-so. We made it to the AFCON. But in 2-3 years' time, if we don't get that right, we will feel it, and then everyone will wake up and say, oh my goodness, what the hell just happened? And then it will even be more difficult for us to get back to our heights that we're supposed to be. I hope I've answered your question.
May
I hope that question is not for me.
I? Straight to you. Good evening. My name is Reynold. I'm working with Ted Neal. My question tonight is, or even before I get to the question, maybe first is to applaud the panelists for a very informative session that they have given us. The information that has been shared is very valuable, especially for me, and the things that we are doing at AIMS. Now, the question that I have is maybe cross-cutting. I want to understand, or at least get an opinion from the panelists. Do you as coaches think that Namibia is ready to professionalize sport? Now when I say sport, I am including football as well. I will first stop here, and then perhaps I will do a follow-up question thereafter.
Don't switch it off again.
Are you on? Yes. I think we are at a level where I think we've always been ready, but we've always been fearful as well. We've been scared. We've been scared. What if we lack the finances? What if this one don't pitch? What if, it's always about the what ifs. And I think we have, if I look at the development of netball, I've never seen the development of netball per se every single day. But if you look at the history, they brought it back into schools, they brought it back into clubs, and it's like you have to be persistent. And rugby has been persistent, cricket has been persistent, netball has been persistent. They kept on doing the small bits every single day, every single day, every single day. And as a sports nation, I would like to call us a sporting nation, we are ready to make it professional as soon as we privatize some of the sporting codes. Because we need to share the load. And once you privatize it, and because all countries that I know that is so successful has privatized different sporting codes. And we need to look into that, and we need to acknowledge our professional players. We need to look at all the professionals. Let's take a simple example. I've always said, why is a South African at Mr. Price Sport in our windows when we have other athletes running, or football players? Or why are we advertising another country's athletes? Then Mboma came along, and Masilingi, and we started posting them only for one season. And now it's gone. But we need to keep on doing it, because in doing that, we take the athletes, we give and we put and we like give them more responsibility. They start acknowledging that I'm a public figure. They'll behave like a public figure. They'll behave like a professional. They'll feel like they are being acknowledged and that they are being honored. And they will take responsibility, and that will have a ripple effect. And everybody would want to be a professional, and the private sector and the government sector will look at it and say, you know what, change is happening. We need to come on board. And I do think that we are ready. It's a matter of a mindset. We need to change our mindset, and we need to think, you know what, this is going to happen in the next 5 years, but in order for that to happen, we need to start now. And I do think that that we are ready. We've always been ready. We've just been fearful of the what ifs, but we are eliminating that slowly. And I believe after tonight, after this day, every single day should be a step in the right direction. It doesn't matter how small the step, and we shouldn't be scared to just move with the flow.
Yes, I'm agreeing 100% with him. I think we are moving into the right direction, but we also need to learn to work together. I think in all sport codes, I think there's still a little bit of friction between some coaches and some clubs and everything, and I think we all just need to face one direction and work together.
Do you have a follow-up question?
Can I come in there? Whether we're ready to professionalize football, specifically not football. I know that we don't have to mention it again. There's no football. There's not been football for the past 3-4 years. But I think we are ready, believe it or not. And the counter question would be, you can't even fix a simple problem. And you say you are ready to professionalize football. I say that in faith, and I say this because success starts with one step. You're not going to become professional tomorrow morning. Voila! And now we are professional. It doesn't happen like that. It's a mindset change to say that, oh, we want to be there in 5 years' time. We want to be there in 10 years' time. But we have to start today to change our mentality and leave this amateurish concepts and mentality behind and start opening up for change, because change is what holding, the fear of change is what's holding us back. So we have to start and say, fine, let's get our house in order. When we have done that, let them start and enter the road, or start with that first step to professionalize football. Because I think we have the capacity. I think we have enough people that can assist us to become professional. I think we have enough minds, we have enough fish, we have enough everything to professionalize the game. So I'm so positive about it, and I know you may be sitting there with counter questions, but I'm telling you, it's not just a thing that you wake up tomorrow morning and say, voila, now we are professional. And the professional people say, welcome. No, it's not the situation like that. You have to start step by step, but you have to start somewhere. And I think if football can get that start right, that first step right, we will professionalize football.
Thank you, Mr. Mani. Are you good? Okay. No, when I asked the question, I already knew that the question from the panelists will come as positive. But do we really have the required policy framework, the necessary support? Do we really have an industry? If tomorrow we develop professionals, say administrators, where are we going to host them or accommodate them? Do we have the framework to do that? Maybe from your experience in South Africa, UN7, maybe can elaborate a little bit and tell us what we have to do, or what your experience is in terms of how we could become professional or professionalize our sport. And,
okay.
Jolene can also maybe add up.
Okay, let me jump in there. If you look at the NFA, that is the custodian of football and the owners of football in Namibia, they are a member of COSAFA, which is a member of CAF, and a member of FIFA. And FIFA's role has always been to educate. So if you look at FIFA, people think that FIFA is a professional organization. FIFA is, yes, the organization is professional, but FIFA is not there for other professional organizations. That's why FIFA doesn't deal with leagues and other things. FIFA deal with developmental issues in sports, and not only on the pitch. Developmental issues in admin, developmental issues in refereeing, developmental issues of coaches. So the structures are there. So it's only for us, the mentality, to overcome that mentality, that amateurish mentality of being unorganized or not having that faith to take that first step. If we overcome that, the structures are already waiting for us. I want to make it clear. The structures are waiting for us. Government are waiting for us. What government is saying, you football people, you fight, you this, you that, you are too smart in this, you are too this and that. They're waiting. Let us create peace. Because government is waiting. Then we have a case to take to parliament. We have a case to fight and say, look now, we've organized ourselves. FIFA is waiting for us. They want to educate us. Even on a marketing level, there are marketing courses. I saw you interviewed, I think Isak Amata a couple of months ago, about marketing. So the structures are definitely there. So it's for us to change the mentality, equip ourselves with those, what the structures present to us, and we will become professional. I can't tell you tomorrow, I can't tell you in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, but I can guarantee you that we have the structures to do that. We have the people, equipped people to go into that structures and professionalize the game. Because if we are not positive about this, then we must just stop playing football. Then the status quo must remain. We have to, and I want to tell the people, the viewers, the listeners, we have to remain positive, not only in football, but across the board in terms of sports, because we have a track record. Netball has a track record. Let's step into that, and let's just professionalize that. Athletics has, let's step into that, professionalize that. Rugby has, archery, swimming, we have track records. So we need to get into those structures that the mother bodies in the world, IAAF, am I correct? IAAF, whether it's the Tennis Association, all those people, they want football and other sports codes to be professionalized. Because in professionalism comes accountability. So let me not go further into those matters. So when there's professionalism, now we can hold you, Windhoek United and your academy, accountable because you are in a professional structure. And the next question would be, is there such a accountability structure? Yes, there is.
Follow-up question?
Thank you.
Any other questions before I hand over to our panel for final remarks? Not.
I would like to ask Ricardo, 30 years ago, Namibia went to the Netball World Cup. And what happened after that? Do we need 30 more years to get professionalized? The problem in Namibia is, especially with netball, there are so many people in positions that they don't know what it is all about. 2 weeks ago, I was invited to be leading a team of selectors for an under-19 netball team. I didn't want to go, but the lady who approached me begged me. And I said, no, don't beg me, I'll help you out. When I got there, the trials were supposed to start at 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
The trials were supposed to start at 2 o'clock. But when I got there at 1:30 because you need to be prepared.
Yes.
If you sit and wait for trials. The girls were warming up and I was asking who are the other selectors. And the lady told me the 2 coaches. So I'm waiting. 2 o'clock came, we couldn't start because the 2
Yes.
coaches are not there.
Not there, yeah.
That is the first red flag. How did they become coaches if they're not on time for the trials? So they got there at 20 minutes past 2 telling me
Yeah.
of under 17, under 19 girls. That's disastrous, to say the least. You know, so I understand some of most of the girls were withdrawn from this team because the girls know more than the two coaches. When I asked them, did you play representative netball for the country? They said, no, we play for UNAM. They believe when UNAM play against a team that is representing the country. And I know UNAM was not that good all of these years. So you tell me, how
yeah.
do we get
Yeah.
netball to become professional?
Yes.
If the people in the positions don't know
Yeah.
the sport, how?
Yeah.
Maybe Jules can also answer me on that. How do we do that? 30 years later, we are light years
Behind. Yes.
30 years after, we, you know, we were talking about working for the love of the sport. That I have done for so many years. Tanil is my daughter. She played for one of the teams that I coached.
Coach there.
You know, after I went with the team to Port Elizabeth, when we came back, they took me out. The director of sport didn't want me as a coach anymore because I defended my team against racism. You know, so how many years do we still need?
Yeah.
In netball specifically.
Okay.
I feel sorry for the girls with so much talent.
Yeah.
And it just goes to waste.
Shoo.
That's a hot seat to sit in.
Very hot seat, yeah. Okay. I think it's a leadership issue, first and foremost, and also an issue where we as Namibia, we don't record our blueprint of success. I will repeat, even in football, we fail to record because it was Sherwin that did it. He did the right thing, but it was Sherwin, so maybe it was luck. Let's push it aside. You've invested your time, your own money. I know how it works. All of us sitting here took out money out of our pockets to make it work because of the love of the game. But when you went to the World Cup, in your leadership in netball, have they recorded the talent identification, how it was done? Have they recorded who were the influential coaches that you had at the different clubs? Who was responsible for A, B, C, and D? What was the relationship with government? What was the relationship with corporates? Have we recorded that? Do we have a blueprint that we can then say, listen here, all of you, here's the blueprint, you are off it, you are off track. And I think that is important for us to always go back into. That's why history is important. History is not just important to say that so-and-so has achieved, this and this has achieved. Have we recorded the road to that specific World Cup that we've qualified as netball? And I think within that we will find all our answers and all our problems. So if talent identification is a problem, who was the head of talent identification? If racism was a problem, who was responsible for that racism bug to come out after we are independent for how many years? What is racism still doing in sports? Who's responsible for that? Because then we have something towards that we can look. Here he is. Let's look at this. But in the absence of that, we will get a lot of resentment. We will get a lot of questions and say, if we could do it then, why can't we do it now? So most of the sporting nations that achieve record and put it in blueprint form so that they know. And there's a reason, sorry, I maybe go a little bit off. Do you guys know that there's a reason why a tournament is played after 4 years or after 2 years? It is because of a blueprint study statistics that were brought in to say that the player development, the talent identification, the preparation of a team normally takes 4 years, or 3 years for that matter. And then they go and showcase what they have developed in the 3 years. Do we understand that period? If the African Nations Cup is played every 2 years, how do we make sure that we qualify every 2 years and not, in our case, it's every 10 years. In football, it's every 10 years. And we also have the same problem because we did not record the previous 2 Nations Cups we went to. So we need to record and ask what was right, what mentality was in there, what preparation was in there, etc., etc. So I don't know much about netball. I can't go deeper than that. But I think in terms of all the sports coach, if there's a success story, let's record for future references so that we can say, in order to have a coach at trials, you must have these credentials, because when Michelle McLean won the Miss Universe, that year we also qualified, and we did it this year, that year, this way.
Beautiful people.
Yeah, maybe we need beautiful people, like you're saying, or whatever the case is. But there should be that thing that you go back into, to say that, okay, that thing will guide us into the future, and it will guide us to professionalism. People, I still believe in that dream. Even if it's so blurry, even if we're in a tunnel, I still believe in it, because we have to believe, because here, we that's in charge of football, in charge of tennis, swimming, we have to believe that there will be a better day for our kids.
No, I fully agree
Yeah.
with you. The thing in sport in Namibia, especially in netball, Jules is a better coach than me. So now I start this thing against Jules to get her out of the position, so that someone that I can, push around, get the position, that is the thing in netball. Me and my sisters, we all played for the former Southwest Africa and Namibia. We played netball, 5 of us. They worked us out, they pushed us out. MC was the one who persisted in staying in the schools and coaching teams and stuff like that. Even the past 5 years, they don't even want MC with all her knowledge and skill. That 1991 at the World Cup, MC was the best shooter, even though she came from Namibia and not from Australia or New Zealand. So that is a big thing. Maybe the director should take note of that in netball.
Can I just quickly add there, and it counts for all sports. We had a debate, or not a debate, a discussion the other day is, we can have all the coaching clinics in the world. The problem is, if I have a coaching clinic for 50 athletes, I teach them what I think is the best for them. Now they go back to their coaches, and they go and tell the coaches how to coach them. And that is a big problem. What we need to do is each one should teach one. We should have more coaches symposiums and coaches gatherings, and we should do that more often and leave the athletes and all the sports people out of it for now, and say for the next 5 years, all we're going to have is coaches symposiums, coaches coaching coaches, and that's how we share our knowledge. And I believe also they are all the rifts, it will come out, you will fight, you will go over it, and it will pass. And then, and then we'll put our egos in our back pockets and we'll move on. But as a coach, I know, I send my athletes to coaching clinics because they love to go there. They are young and then when they come and say, coach, but that coach says like this and that, I say, hey, listen here, I'm coach here. Or you go back there and you go, and you're going to go and train there. And then they're like, no, we don't want to go. And then I realize, you know what? That's the worst thing we can do, is send our kids on these courses without attending yourself. And that in all the sports, especially team sports, that is a big issue. So we should start coaching coaches instead of getting athletes or getting people, because it's $500 per kid, you make 50,000 or whatever, and the aim of the thing is completely wrong. And it's not to develop, but it's at the end of the day, it's beneficial for you as a person,
but it's not developing anybody or anyone or even yourself. So we should maybe just start, just having coaches symposiums and invest in that instead of me coaching another coach's athlete. And
The directorate of sport should take note of that, and the different federations should do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Since I'm also involved in netball, can I also contribute to
Please
the netball
do.
conversation?
Please do.
My humble opinion is, if we line up the horses that run the Durban July, we can have the most spectacular horses ever. If the jockey that drives the race is the wrong jockey, you will have the wrong placement, strategic position, strategic direction, vision. I do believe in the legacy programs, the footprint of the legacy programs. And there's one thing I can tell you, if you want to see how it's possible to have different opinions, you put a bunch of girls in a room. We can do it spectacularly well. What I want to say, I just want to make one comment on what Sheldon said. It's very important that, yes, each one teach one, correct, but each one teach one, or coaches coaching coaches without standards can very quickly spiral into a very wrong direction. And yes, it is true, the reach of coaches being coached is much further than coaches coaching players or athletes. That is definitely true. There's always a golden thread line to learn from those that came before you. Like, they actually netball royalty. You might be soccer or football royalty, but they netball royalty. So you should speak in capital letters to them. But what I want to say about it is there's a space for all these development programs to go, but they have to be athlete-centered or coach-centered with the same purpose for everyone. And in that, I would like to say to the director, it is important to create the synergy and the momentum between the various sporting codes. And it is really important that those jockeys that are driving sports, that are ruining sports, we all read papers, we all see the various sporting codes, whatever their problems is, whether it's not the league, whether it's court cases, different representing bodies, all of that. We also have to be brave enough it's part of professionalizing sport, to eject the rotten or the things that does not work because it's not part of the professional recipe. Those things that are part of the recipe should be pursued with zest, day by day, with repetition and persistence. And those that are not part of that professional recipe should be removed from the recipe because it's ruining the flavor.
I wish it was so much earlier in the day so we can continue this talk. But Maya, as a closing, I'd like to ask you, what do you have to say to upcoming coaches out there who still have the passion, they still have the love for the game, but they also want to see the sport professionalized or the industry professionalized? What do you have to say to them?
Just very short. Build on the positive blueprint and keep your athlete in the know. That's what you have to focus on.
Do you agree, Chantal, as your closing?
Yes, I will also say always go back and go and ask the people that has been in the industry for years. Ask them, how can you improve a certain point in your coaching, and work from that. Go and do your research. We have all the knowledge on the fingertips of our fingers today. We are in such a lucky position in today's lifestyle with all the internet access we have. So go and do your research and build from there.
I'm sure you would agree on my left-hand side, if I were to ask if they're available to share their knowledge, I'm sure they'll be available to share your knowledge as coaches, right? As you've been doing the whole night. But I'm gonna ask Zander the last question. And if a school coach were to call you tomorrow and ask you, Zander, give me your tips, give me your playbook, are you willing to share?
Tell him it's going to take more than a call. We'll have to meet up. But yeah, it's like I said, I'm challenging, as we expect our athletes, our individuals in team sports, as individuals, to go to extreme lengths to be the best. I'm basically challenging all the coaches out there. Let's go to those extreme lengths to better ourselves, to educate ourselves, and in order for that to funnel through to our athletes and our individuals. Everyone's available. We've created this platform, so get in touch with the correct people, get in touch with the federations in order to get contact with the correct people. And like Jules mentioned, it's a fine line between obviously coaching coaches, but if you don't have the necessary answers, and there'll come a time where you need to get the correct answer from someone else. Do the right thing. I mean, take responsibility, because obviously our actions will determine our future, and then it has an effect on all our athletes. So again, challenging everyone out there, all the coaches, to go the extra mile and obviously tap into the knowledge that's already there, the blueprint, as we mentioned.
Before I close off, I'd like to tell the panel that in the event that coaching does not work out for you, preaching will do the thing. I think I've learned the most. As someone, I see myself as a sport educator, I've really learned the most. I've seen another dynamic to coaching tonight. I've heard another dynamic, and I'm humbled by the fact that I could sit between you guys and be the one to ask the questions. So to my audience, physical and online, I really hope that you've also learned as much as I have, and that you take this information and you go use it as of tomorrow, as Sherwin challenged you, so that you don't only improve yourself as a coach, administrator, or just someone passionate about the sport industry, but that you actually change the industry as of tomorrow. To my panel, I thank you so much. I am grateful, I'm humbled by your presence, and I would really love to continue this discussion. If not tonight, then at another opportunity. So to everyone, thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing in the dream of ASOS in professionalizing sport through education. We thank you and good night.
Thanks for having us.